Hello students, here is the next video on the chapter Lost Spring by Anis Jung from class 12th NCERT Hornbill. Let's start with a bit of introduction about the author. Anis Jung, an Indian female author, journalist and columnist, was born in Rourkela in an aristocratic family of Hyderabad. Having born in the family of well-known Urdu poets, Anis was inclined towards writing books at an early age. In this chapter, she depicts the deplorable condition of poor children forced into labor early in life and miss out the joyful and carefree days of their life. Lost Spring deals with the stories of stolen childhood, analyzing the grinding poverty and stigma of occupation which condemns children to a life of loss, offspring and exploitation. The stories here tell about the plight of the children who have to carry the baggage of family livelihood in the age of innocence, where they have potential to learn something new every day. Such children are condemned to grim surroundings amidst exploitation. The title Lost Spring conveys how millions of children in India lose out on living the spring of their lives, that is, their childhood. The story of the two protagonists highlight the issue of such children and how they miss the simple joyful moments of childhood due to poor socio-economic background. The lesson also exposes the flaws of this society like poverty, stigma of caste or profession, apathy and antipathy that kills their hope and innocence. The writer also highlights the greed of moneylenders, middlemen and industrialists and also injustice of law-keepers, policemen etc. who create the vicious trap of grinding poverty for them with no scope of escape. The author, with the help of her two protagonists, Sahib-e-Alam, a rag picker, and Mukesh, the son of a bangle maker, has successfully expressed that it is a matter of national shame of children being condemned to poverty and life of exploitation. Let's begin with the first story. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. The first part talks about the writer's impressions about the life of the unfortunate rag pickers through the protagonist Sahib-e-Alam, known as Sahib. The rag pickers migrated from Dhaka and find a settlement in Simapuri. They end up losing their green fields and homes due to storms and floods. Then they come to the big city to find a living, but remain poor. They settled there as squatters around 3 decades ago. Simapuri is far different from Delhi in terms of development. The author further tries to analyze their poor state. She finds that they came as refugees from Bangladesh around 30 years back in quest of survival. Now their number has reached 10,000, but still they live there neither with identity nor permit. They have got ration cards and right to vote, but there are no complaints as they have got food to eat. For them, food is more important than identity, and for survival in Simapuri, the only job is to do is rag picking. The author comes across Sahib every morning while he is scrounging for something valuable in the nearby garbage. He remains barefoot like other 10,000 rag pickers. They grow amidst extreme poverty and thus become partner to their parents in their quest to survive. They are so poor that they can't afford shoes, but when asked, they cover up their inability in name of tradition. The author also mentions an episode when she found Sahib standing and watching two young men playing tennis in the nearby neighborhood club. He seems to be content to watch it because he knows it is beyond his reach. The author also mentions about Sahib, who was wearing discarded tennis shoes that looked strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But tennis is definitely out of his reach. Garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For children, it is wrapped in wonder, while for the elders, it's a means of survival. That is their daily bread and roof over their heads. Sometimes Sahib finds a rupee or even a 10 rupee note in the garbage heap. Then there is hope of finding more. Thus, it is just like a treasure hunt game, full of thrill and excitement for children like Sahib. The author sarcastically mentions that rag picking has finally become an art form with the passage of time. The children who grow up at Simapuri are skilled in this art form. Their hands know where to push, what to look for, what to ignore, and they always pull out recyclable waste. The children at Simapuri are definitely skilled in this art form. The author sees them every morning when their barefoot gang is on their hunt for something recyclable to be sold to bring them survival, and disappears by the afternoon time. The author feels awful to see Sahib, whose name means Lord of Universe. Ironically, he does not know the meaning, nor has a piece of land, except the vast streets of Delhi to roam around, scrounging for gold. Unfortunately, he has lost his freedom of roaming too. Now, he works at a tea stall, is being paid rupees 800 and all his meals, but he seems to be unhappy, as he is no longer his own master. The loss of identity weighs too heavy. The author comments that the spring of his life is ruined. The author Anis Jung, after describing Sahib-e-Alam, a rag picker's life, switches to her next protagonist, Mukesh, who comes from the family of bangle makers in Firozabad. He lives with a dream. I want to drive a car. In spite of his family doing the job for ages, he insists to be his own master. Firozabad is quite popular of its glass-blowing industry and bangles. Every other family is engaged in making bangles. For generations, they have been working around hot furnaces, welding glass, making glass bangles for women all over India. A staggering 20,000 children are a part of this business. Ironically, nobody knows that it is illegal to make children like Mukesh to work in hot glass furnaces and dingy cell-like places. The author further sheds light on their pathetic living conditions. Mukesh takes the author to his home. The latter follows Mukesh through stinking lanes choked with garbage. They pass through homes that remain hovels with crumbling walls, wobbly doors with no windows at all. It seems that human and animals live there together. They enter into a half-built shack. His father, a poor bangle maker, in spite of toiling hard for years, has failed to educate his two sons and renovate his house. All he has managed to do is to teach them what he knows, the art of bangle making. On entering Mukesh's house, the author finds a frail young lady cooking evening meal over a firewood stove. She is Mukesh's elder brother's wife, a responsible person and worthy of getting respect. Though young in years, she is in charge of house and takes care of three men, her husband, her father-in-law and Mukesh. The author further describes the perspective of old generation and women engaged in the business of bangle making for ages. Mukesh's grandmother implies that it is their destiny to take birth in the family of bangle makers. She implies that God-given lineage can never be broken. Though she had seen her own husband becoming blind at an early age, she insists on accepting the truth as it cannot be defied. They have been born in the caste of bangle makers and nothing can be done with it. She believes in carrying the tradition as they have been blessed with the art by God Himself. These people engaged in bangle industry run a high risk from losing their eyesight to their lives. Young boys and girls sit next to their fathers and mothers, welding pieces of colored glass into circles of bangles. They work in dark hutments next to lines of flames of flickering oil lamps. Their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. They often end up losing their eyesight before they become adults. Next, the author talks about the sanctity of bangles. The bangles are of great importance to women. They signify good fortune and prosperity. It is compulsory for newlywed brides and would-be brides to wear bangles made of glass, as they signify the long life of the husband. The bangles are symbolic of happy daughters and wives. But ironically, the lady with no eyesight but bangles in her hands has not savored proper meals whole her life. Poverty and tradition forbid the young people to follow their dreams. Lack of resources to do anything else except bangle making is one cause that makes them easy victims to middlemen, government officials, and moneylenders. They fall into the vicious web just like their fathers and forefathers. The wearisome and dreary job, day after day, year after year, has smashed their confidence and willingness to dream. The baggage of poverty and tradition has been put over on Mukesh's tender shoulders too, which he is expected to accept as naturally as his brother and father. He is not expected to dare, but unexpectedly Mukesh has a spark in him when he dares to be a motor mechanic. He is not afraid to work hard and go to distant garage to learn the job. His perseverance and determination to dare cheers up the author, who had till now seen their childhood being ruined under such circumstances. But his dreams are realistic and grounded, as he does not talk of flying aeroplanes. The author Anees Jung has tried to impart an important message to the society through these stories. She propagates the education of children and enforcement of strict laws against child labor by the government. The message is to put an end to the child exploitation and let all children enjoy their days of spring and joy. Here is a graphical representation for you to understand the similarity between two protagonists. In spite of the differences in their background, profession, and living places, a striking similarity has been seen between Sahib-e-Alam and Mukesh. That is, poverty, illiteracy, and child labor. Here are few practice questions for you. Anees Jung seems at odds with herself while commenting about the life of Sahib. Discuss. Bring out the pathos and irony in profession and life of bangle makers. I hope you all liked the video. Thank you.